She's just a junior. This'll be easy.
Have you ever been underestimated in public? Objection!
Object!
What would you do if every voice told you that you didn't belong?
This was the moment everything changed, and they never saw it coming.
The courtroom doors opened, and silence rippled across the polished wood benches. 100 eyes turned in unison, each one sharp, measuring, already judging. She stepped inside. A young black woman, briefcase balanced in her hand, suit pressed sharp against her frame. Her stride was steady, deliberate, the kind that refused apology. And yet, the air shifted, not with respect, never that, with whispers, with smirks. The opposing table was a wall of navy blue and gray. 4 seasoned attorneys leaned back in leather chairs, cufflinks flashing under the fluorescent lights. They didn't stand, they didn't nod. One of them chuckled, leaning close enough for the sound to carry. "She's just a junior. This will be easy." The words slithered across the room. Reporters in the gallery caught it. Some hiding grins, others jotting the insult down. Phones angled discreetly, capturing the mismatch in a frame. One woman, alone, facing 4. The story practically wrote itself before a word of law was spoken. She set her case file down at the smaller table assigned to her. It was tucked off to the side, as if the court itself had forgotten she belonged here. The wood was scuffed, the edge uneven. Her chair wobbled slightly when she pulled it back, but her posture remained unbroken. The laughter did not stop. It rolled like a tide, low but constant, a rhythm meant to drown her. Another attorney leaned forward, voice dipped in condescension. "Do you even know what case you're handling?" The gallery stirred. Students scribbled notes with smirks. Clerks whispered. A reporter adjusted her lens for a closer shot, searching for a crack in composure. But the woman they underestimated gave them nothing. No flinch, no retreat, only silence. Sharp, deliberate, weaponized. She adjusted her chair, unsnapped her pen, placed it neatly across her notepad, then lifted her gaze, slow and steady, until it met the man who had mocked her. Her eyes held, calm, unshaken, but behind them, something glinted, a blade still sheathed. For the first time, his smirk faltered. The judge had not yet entered. The jury had not yet taken their seats, but already the trial had begun. And already the balance of power shifted, if only by an inch, because sometimes silence isn't absence, it's preparation, and she knew. Every insult, every whisper, every camera flash, they were not weights to carry. They were receipts she would collect. The gavel had not yet struck. The case had not yet started. But the first verdict was already written in the eyes of those who dared to laugh. They thought she didn't belong. They thought this would be easy. Have you ever been underestimated in public? This story might change how you see silence. The gavel struck once, and the room stood, a ritual of order, but order can hide contempt. The judge entered, robe trailing, eyes scanning the courtroom with weary impatience. He barely glanced at her table. His gaze landed instead on the cluster of senior attorneys already waiting. They nodded. He nodded back. She rose, steady as protocol demanded. The gallery watched her stand. A ripple of laughter flickered across the benches. Hushed quickly, but not forgotten. "Be seated," the judge said. The words landed flat, not directed at her, but spoken as if she were furniture in the room. The opposing counsel stood at once, shoulders square, voice polished. "Your Honor, before we begin, I would request clarification. Has junior counsel on the other side prepared to argue? We'd hate to waste the court's time." Whispers sparked in the gallery. The phrase junior counsel burned hotter than a direct insult. A reporter's pen scratched the phrase onto a page. Phones lifted. Subtle red recording lights glowing in the corners. The judge tilted his head. Impatient. "Well, answer." She rose again, file in hand. "Yes, Your Honor. I am prepared." The judge's eyes slid over her like water over stone. "Proceed," he muttered, already turning back toward the other table. The opposing attorney smiled. A grin sharpened for theater. He launched into questions. Statements, objections, rapid, relentless. Every time she opened her mouth, his voice cut in. Objection, speculation, irrelevant. The words cracked like whips, snapping her sentences in half. The judge nodded along. Disinterested, objection sustained. Counsel, keep it brief. Her words became fragments, each one cut short before it could form a thought. To the gallery, it looked like failure, like drowning. One of the senior attorneys leaned back, muttering loud enough for all to hear. She should be clerking, not leading. The laughter returned, sharper this time. It rolled through the benches, a chorus of disdain echoing off the oak-paneled walls. A clerk's shoulders shook with stifled amusement. An intern smirked as he scribbled notes meant for gossip, not record. Through it all, she remained still. Her hand moved across the page, writing with slow, deliberate strokes. The pen tapped once, then flowed steady. Every line a record not for them, but for her. Another objection slammed down. Objection, irrelevant. The judge, without looking, waved his hand. Sustained. The rhythm became predictable. Attack, dismissal, laughter. It was not law. It was performance, and the court allowed it. The gallery leaned forward, eager for cracks. A camera clicked softly, capturing the solitary figure in black against a tide of ridicule. One reporter whispered, "She won't last the hour," but she lasted. She sat, she wrote. Her silence was not weakness, it was a shield. And behind it, something sharp waited. The judge sighed loudly, pen tapping against his desk. "Counsel, if you cannot keep pace, we'll have to reconsider time allocation." The words fell heavy. Not neutral, not fair. They were an invitation for collapse. The defense team smirked, exchanging glances like boys sharing a private joke. Their confidence filled the room. It smothered. It mocked. It assumed. And yet, she turned another page. Her hand never trembled. Her notes grew, steady as a drumbeat under the chaos. The system had aligned against her. Every voice, every nod, every ruling stacked the scale to one side. But here's the question that lingered, unspoken but alive in the air. How long can one person hold their ground when the room itself wants them gone? Would you? The rhythm of the attacks was relentless. Objection, dismissal, laughter. The tide of disdain pressed in from every corner of the courtroom, and then silence. But not hers. Theirs. Her. Hand slipped into the case file at her side. Slow, measured, a rustle of paper. That cut sharper than any objection. She drew a folder into the light, its edges worn. Its label stamped bold in black ink, Exhibit 47. The gallery stilled. Reporters froze mid-note. Pens dangling in the air. Phones tilted upward, searching for focus. The judge leaned forward at last, curiosity breaking through impatience. She rose to her feet. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "Your Honor, I present Exhibit 47, previously sealed under federal law." The words struck like a gavel of their own. No one laughed, not this time. The lead attorney scoffed, forcing a brittle smile. "Exhibit 47? Counselor, this is theater. That file was dismissed years ago." Her gaze found his. No, it was sealed. And it has just been unsealed. Gasps broke from the benches. A reporter's phone glowed red, capturing every syllable. Another leaned forward, whispering urgently into a recorder. The stenographer's fingers stuttered, then raced across the keys, her eyes wide. The record had just changed. The attorney's laugh thinned, his shoulders tightening. "This doesn't prove anything," he said, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. The judge reached for the folder, his hands deliberate now. He turned the first page, his brows drew. Together, another page, then another. Transaction. Logs out internal emails, signatures, that should never have seen daylight, each sheet a nail. In the coffin of arrogance, the opposing counsel shifted in their seats, smiles gone, hands trembling. Against polished wood, one muttered, "Where did she get this?" But she did not answer. She did not need to. The evidence spoke for her, louder than any defense could. A young intern in the back row whispered, almost reverent, "She had it all along." The words spread like a current. The gallery leaned forward, eager, uncertain. No laughter now, only the weight of realization pressing down. She stood silent, hands folded neatly before her. It was not drama, it was fact. Unveiled, unavoidable. The judge cleared his throat, voice slower now. "Counsel, explain the origin of this exhibit." Her reply was steady. "The document was sealed after a federal review. My client filed a motion last month to reopen. Approval was granted this morning. Every syllable landed heavy. The courtroom that had mocked her an hour ago now bent toward her words. The lead attorney sat back, pale. His pen lay abandoned. His colleagues whispered frantically, searching for an argument that would not come. She remained still, not triumphant, not smug, simply present. Because the truth didn't need volume. It only needed light. The gallery held its breath, waiting. Reporters scribbled with frantic energy, their notes destined for headlines before the hour was out. The weight of Exhibit 47 filled the room, undeniable. They had mistaken her silence for weakness. Now that silence had turned into the sharpest blade of all. You could feel it, the shift, the turn, the balance of power leaning, tilting, ready to fall. Have you ever seen certainty vanish in a single moment? Stay with this story, because the reveal you've just witnessed is only the beginning. The judge leaned back in his chair, the folder still open before him. His glasses slid lower, his eyes narrowing as he traced the signatures, the dates, the undeniable trail. For the first time that day, the room grew still not from mockery, but from weight. The lead attorney stood quickly, his voice forced into strength. "Your Honor, this is misleading. The documents are incomplete. We can't—" "Sit down, counselor," the judge said. His tone was sharper now, carrying an authority that hadn't been there an hour ago. The words froze him mid-sentence. The gallery shifted uneasily, whispers buzzing like static. Was the judge listening? She remained standing at her table, her hands folded, her face unreadable, not triumphant, not desperate, simply there, anchored, unshaken. The judge tapped a page with one finger. "These records suggest direct involvement. Do they not?" The defense team faltered. One shuffled papers aimlessly, another coughed into his hand. None answered. "Yes or no?" the judge pressed. Still, silence. The gallery leaned forward. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing the paralysis of men who had walked in so certain, so untouchable. Finally, one attorney tried. "Your Honor, even if the documents are authentic, damages remain speculative. We can't—" "Enough!" The single word cut through the air like a blade. It silenced the defense. It silenced the gallery. Even the clicking pens stopped. The judge closed the folder with deliberate finality. He looked out over the courtroom, his expression unreadable but firm. This court recognizes Exhibit 47 as valid evidence. "The motion to dismiss is denied," the gallery gasped. The attorneys stiffened. Her eyes did not flicker. The judge continued, voice steady, heavier now. "Given the scope of fraud revealed, this case is dismissed in favor of the plaintiff. Damages are hereby awarded." It landed like thunder. One sentence, the kind that ends careers, reshapes headlines, rewrites the balance of power. The gallery erupted, not in laughter, but in disbelief. Gasps, whispers, a few claps, tentative, then bolder. "She did it!" someone hissed. "She actually turned it!" The defense table was a ruin of certainty. Pale faces, lips pressed thin, hands useless against the weight of what had just been spoken. The lead attorney leaned back, staring at nothing, the echo of his earlier confidence gone. She lowered herself into her chair. No smile, no theatrics, only a pen in her hand, moving once more across a page, noting the moment like any other line in the record. To her, this wasn't spectacle. It was work, precise, measured, necessary. The gallery couldn't look away. Reporters whispered into microphones. She shifted the case. She broke their defense. Phones buzzed, headlines drafted in real time. And yet, at her table, all was quiet. The same silence they had mocked now carried. Victory, sometimes justice arrives in a whisper. Sometimes it crashes down in a sentence, and this sentence had just shattered an empire. Have you ever watched arrogance dissolve into panic in the span of a breath? Stay with me, because what comes next will prove this was never just a victory. It was the start of a reckoning. The words still echoed when the first phone rang. Case dismissed. Damages awarded. The sentence had barely landed, and already it was running wild beyond the walls. The gallery erupted. Some gasped. Some whispered furiously, others simply sat stunned, staring at the woman they had mocked minutes ago. Reporters surged forward. Phones raised, cameras blinking. The courtroom, once a theater for laughter, became a press room for history. At the defense table, the collapse was visible. One attorney fumbled with his notes, dropping a pen that rolled uselessly to the floor. Another stared blankly at the folder in front of him, its pages now meaningless. The lead counsel rose again, voice cracking. Your Honor, this is premature. We request a stay pending appeal. The judge didn't even lift his eyes. His gavel struck once, sharp, final, denied. The sound silenced even the gallery. It was over. And yet, the defense attorney tried again, his voice thinner now. This can't be, but no one listened. Not the judge, not the gallery, not even his own team, who now leaned away from him as though his failure were contagious. The woman at the plaintiff's table did not speak. She did not rise. She merely opened her notebook, wrote a single line, and closed it again. Her. Silence filled the room more completely than their protests. Reporters whispered into their microphones. She turned the case in less than an hour. She's dismantled their defense entirely. History has just been made. The gallery no longer looked at the defense. Their eyes were fixed on her. On. The calm figure who sat unmoved while reputations unraveled across the aisle. It was the quiet that unnerved them most, because silence here did not mean defeat. It meant control. And control had changed hands without a word. The lead attorney slumped back into his chair, sweat collecting at his brow. His hand shook as he reached for a glass of water. The glass trembled against his lips, betraying the collapse he couldn't hide. One of the jurors whispered to another, "She didn't even raise her voice." The reply came soft, awed. She didn't have to. The gavel struck again, closing the session. Court is adjourned. Chairs scraped, footsteps echoed, and the noise swelled. Phones rang, pens scratched, cameras flashed. The courtroom dissolved into chaos. And still, she sat unmoved, steady, watching the storm she had unleashed consume. The men who thought her silence meant nothing. Sometimes the loudest sound in a room is not shouting, it is stillness. And in that stillness, the question lingered like smoke above the wreckage. When the powerful lose their certainty, what do they grab onto first, pride or denial? The ruling still hung in the air when the first headline flashed. A phone screen lit up in the back row. Case dismissed. Damages awarded. Another buzz followed, then another, until half the gallery glowed with the echo of a verdict spreading faster than the gavel could silence it. Reporters surged toward the aisle, cameras raised high, flashes burst like lightning, each one searing a record of humiliation into permanence. The courtroom, once a fortress of confidence for the defense, cracked under the pressure of exposure. At their table, collapse was plain. The lead attorney sat rigid, staring straight ahead, his jaw locked tight. Beside him, a younger colleague fumbled with his phone, the screen vibrating with call after call, partners, clients, superiors demanding answers he didn't have. Another dropped his pen, bent to pick it up and stayed hunched there a second too long, as if hiding. The gallery saw it all. They had laughed at her before. Now they laughed at him. A whisper floated from the benches. "He's finished." The words traveled, gathering force, until even the stenographer dared a glance toward the defense table with something almost like pity. The judge had left the bench, robes sweeping. But the storm continued without him. The courtroom no longer belonged to procedure. It belonged to narrative. The defense attorney tried again, his voice brittle. "We will appeal. This ruling won't stand." But his protest vanished under the swell of voices. No one listened. Not the reporters already dictating live updates, not the gallery, buzzing with energy, not even his own team, whose silence cut sharper than any rebuke. She remained seated at her table, unmoved. Her hands rested on the closed file, her gaze fixed forward. She didn't gloat, she didn't smile, she simply waited, letting the chaos swirl while her stillness drew all eyes back to her, and they looked. One by one, the gallery's heads turned until the weight of attention shifted completely. The woman they had underestimated now held the room without a word. A young reporter whispered into her recorder, almost reverent. "She hasn't said a single thing. And still she's won." The defense attorneys shrank beneath that silence. What had been their shield of arrogance now dissolved into exposure. Their collapse was not loud, it was visible. And visibility is a harsher verdict than any judge can give. One intern snapped a photo. 4 men in expensive suits, heads bowed, papers scattered, their empire in ruins at their feet. The image spread before they even left the room. The gallery stirred again. Claps. This time firmer, a few voices cheering softly, breaking the unwritten rules of courtroom decorum. Order was gone. The moment belonged to her. She adjusted her chair, that was all. And yet the sound carried, louder than their protests, because collapse doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it arrives with silence, leaving nothing to grab onto but the memory of arrogance. Look at them now, heads lowered, calls unanswered, dignity fractured. The same men who mocked her voice now begged for someone else's to rescue them, and in that image, frozen under the flash of 100 cameras, lay the question no one dared speak but everyone felt. How fast can power turn when truth refuses to be ignored? The headlines did not wait for recess. By the time the clerk called adjournment, the story had already left the courthouse, sprinting across feeds and networks. Breaking, defense collapses under Exhibit 47. Case dismissed. Damages awarded. Every phone in the room buzzed at once. A chorus of defeat that no gavel could contain. The defense team drowned in it. Calls from partners. Messages from clients, emails piling in like sand in an hourglass. They could no longer flip. One attorney tried to leave quickly, shoving papers into his briefcase. But the gallery saw him, saw the tremor in his hands, saw the sweat beading his forehead. Reporters blocked his path. Microphones thrust forward. "Did you know about the documents? When did you realize you'd lost control?" He kept his head down, no answers given, but silence. Here was no shield. It was confession. Another attorney stood, glanced toward his colleagues, then simply walked out. No defense, no dignity, only retreat. The door slammed behind him, loud enough to make the gallery murmur. The lead counsel remained, frozen. His phone lit the table with each incoming call. He didn't touch it. He couldn't. Around them, the room fractured. Some spectators left early, satisfied. Others lingered, hungry for more collapse, savoring every second of the fall. A few even applauded openly now, no longer afraid of reprimand. The court was no longer a chamber of law. It was a theater of reckoning. And at the center, she sat still, her hands folded neatly over her file, her eyes steady. Not chasing cameras, not indulging in victory. Control radiated from her silence, drawing all chaos into its orbit. A journalist whispered to another, "Look at her! She hasn't spoken in 20 minutes, and she's commanding the whole room." The reply came quick, certain. She doesn't have to speak. They're unraveling themselves. The defense's own colleagues in the gallery shifted uneasily. Some turned away. Others slipped out quietly, unwilling to be tied to the sinking ship. Abandonment piled on collapse, and the once proud team shrank smaller with each betrayal. Reporters filed dispatches in real time. On one screen, a news anchor declared, "This may be the most public dismantling of a defense team in recent memory." On another, a headline scrolled across, "Arrogance undone by evidence." The gallery drank it in, every whisper, every click of a camera. Every hurried text fed the spectacle. Power was not just lost, it was devoured. She finally gathered her notes. Not in haste, not in celebration. Each page aligned with precision, each motion deliberate. It was a quiet performance of authority, reminding everyone that control was hers to wield and theirs to lose. The lead attorney finally spoke, voice low, frayed. This isn't the end." But no one believed him. The gallery's response was silence, not the kind she wielded, sharp and chosen, but the kind that falls on words already dead. He lowered his head. For the first time that day, he looked small and still. She did not look his way. Her gaze stayed forward toward the doors, toward the world waiting outside. Because collapse inside these walls was only the beginning. Outside, reputations were already burning, and the fire would not stop at the courthouse steps. How far can a fall travel once it begins? When arrogance cracks, does it shatter only one career, or does it take an entire system with it? The courtroom doors opened, and light poured in. It was not the pale fluorescence of the chamber, but the raw daylight of the city. For a moment, the sudden brightness felt like another verdict, this one delivered by the sun itself. She stepped forward, case files tucked beneath her arm, shoulders straight, chin level. Behind her, the chaos still raged, attorneys arguing in low tones, reporters calling in updates, spectators buzzing like a hive. But the moment she crossed the threshold, the sound dimmed, replaced by something larger, flashbulbs, dozens of them. A wall of cameras clicked in rapid bursts, each one desperate to claim the first image of history. Microphones rose, jostling, crowding her path. The hallway had transformed into a gauntlet of questions. How did you get the file? Was this planned from the beginning? Do you think this verdict will stand on appeal? What do you say to the critics who mocked you this morning? The questions struck like hailstones, sharp and relentless. Each reporter sought to draw her voice, to snatch a soundbite that would echo beyond the courthouse. But she walked on, heels tapping against marble, a steady rhythm cutting through the storm. The crowd surged closer. Security pushed back, but the tide pressed forward, unwilling to yield. Phones hovered high, their tiny red lights capturing every angle. In those lenses, she was no longer simply a lawyer. She was a symbol, a disruption, a headline walking. And still, she did not speak. Her silence stretched, absorbing the noise, forcing the questions to fall flat in the air. One reporter lowered his mic, frustration etched across his face. "She's not giving us anything," he muttered. But the camera stayed trained on her, because the absence of words was the story. The sunlight caught the edges of her suit, casting her in contrast, dark fabric against gold light. The image was stark, cinematic, undeniable. A photographer whispered to himself, "This shot will be on the front page by dawn." She reached the landing at the end of the hall. The crowd funneled tighter, microphones stretching, voices rising. Her steps slowed. The room leaned in. Would she speak? Would she give them the line they demanded? She stopped, her gaze lifted not to the nearest microphone, not to the shouting reporters, but to the hallway itself, its columns, its marble, its echoing silence beneath the noise. The crowd hushed just slightly, sensing the shift. The weight of the moment hung between them. Fragile and immense, her hands remained at her side, her lips did not part. The pause itself became unbearable. It was no longer a hallway of questions. It was a waiting room for history. Because sometimes the most powerful moment isn't what is said, it is the stillness that makes every listener hold their breath, and that was what she gave them. Silence sharpened to a point. Silence that spoke louder than answers. The reporters, frustrated but riveted, turned to each other. "She won't give us the quote," one muttered. Another replied, "Then the quote is her silence." And in that admission, the truth settled across the hall like a final gavel. They had mocked her quiet before. Now, it held the entire room captive. The cameras clicked. The microphones hovered. But the story had already been written in her steps, in her gaze, in her refusal to be cornered by noise. This was no longer about the verdict. It was about presence. It was about power that does not need to shout. She turned again, eyes steady, walking forward once more. The hall split before her. The crowd pulled aside by a gravity they couldn't fight. Not because she demanded space, but because she owned it. And in that moment, a new truth became impossible to ignore. The collapse inside the courtroom was only the first fall. What waited outside was bigger, much bigger. The hallway pulsed with unanswered questions. Reporters leaned forward, their microphones a forest of expectation. Cameras blinked, hungry for the line that would define the day. She slowed, turned, and for the first time since the ruling, she faced them. Her voice was calm, not raised, not hurried. It cut through the din with surgical precision. Power isn't in who laughs the loudest. It's in who speaks last. The words struck harder than any objection. They landed not just in notebooks and recorders, but in the chest of every person who heard them. The hallway froze, as if even the marble walls paused to listen. A silence followed, vast and resonant. Reporters forgot their follow-ups. Cameras forgot to blink. For one suspended moment, the crowd became witness, not interrogator. Then the clicking began again, rapid, frantic, desperate to capture the image. A lone black woman, steady in the storm, delivering a sentence that would echo far beyond these walls. She did not wait for applause. She turned once more and continued down the hall. Her steps were unhurried, her file tucked close, her gaze fixed on the doors ahead. Every stride said what words did not. Control was hers to carry, and she carried it lightly. The courthouse steps stretched before her, washed in gold from the late afternoon sun. She emerged into it slowly, framed against the skyline, her silhouette etched by light. Phones rose in unison, capturing history as it descended into the street. Reporters scrambled down the stairs, shouting questions. But their voices no longer mattered. The line had already been spoken, the story already written. Nothing they asked could change it now. She paused at the bottom step, eyes sweeping the crowd one last time. Not with defiance, with clarity. With a calm that told the world she did not need their validation. Sometimes justice does not roar, sometimes it whispers. And yet the whisper carries further than the shout. She turned and walked into the city, leaving the courthouse and its echoes behind. The crowd parted before her. No one asked if she belonged. The answer was already carved into the air. Behind her, the headlines finished drafting themselves. Before her, the world opened wide. The silence she carried had become a weapon. Now it was a legacy. And as her figure disappeared into the sunlight, the question shifted from her to us. What do we do with the silences we hold? Are they weight, or are they weapons waiting for the right moment? If this story moved you, share it. Because justice is louder when more people listen. Because silence becomes power when it is carried together. Because somewhere, someone is waiting for proof that quiet strength can change the world. Be the echo that proves them right.